Thank you for joining IAB There.
Good afternoon and welcome to IAB There, our regular streaming show in which we connect the digital advertising ecosystem. I'm Cheryl Goldstein. I'm the Executive Vice President of Member Engagement and Development here at the IAB. This episode on IAB There is brought to you by IAB's Inclusion Institute and our founding partner, SNAP. The Inclusion Institute is dedicated to bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion to the digital media industry. On today's show, very excited to speak with our special guest, Rachel Lowenstein, who is partner and director at Invention Plus at Mindshare, and Bernadette Knight, who's senior category marketing director of White Spirits at Campari Group. We're going to talk about how Campari's Sky brand is leveraging Mindshare's private marketplace to connect with LGBTQ audiences. So let's bring Rachel and Bernadette onto the screen. Welcome, ladies. So great to see you.
Great to be here.
Last time we saw each other was at IAB's Brand Disruption Summit. And at that point, there was some big things disrupting brands. One was around the diversity, equity, inclusion space where we all, were called to action and asked to jump in and start doing more to make the world and our industry a more inclusive place. But Rachel, that is nothing new for you. You've had many years of dedication to bringing diversity to both your company and to the industry. So let's start with you, a little bit about your background and some of the things that brought you to where you are today and some of the things you're doing now. And then we'll get to you, Bernadette, okay? So Rachel, a little bit about yourself.
Great, and thanks for having us, Cheryl and IAB team. So I'm Rachel Lowenstein. I work on a team called Invention Plus, which is the innovation arm at Mindshare. I have a particular focus and interest on what I call inclusive innovation and how we can use media, the power of media, the media landscape to create more equity and inclusivity for all types of folks who traditionally and in many cases have been othered or excluded by our industry, and therefore creates a level of marginalization and oppression that is even more compounded than what we might already be seeing or facing. So I co-founded something called The Collective, which is Mindshare's ERG and DE&I consultancy, where the inclusion PMPs were born out of. And we have a real focus from a consultancy perspective on working with incredible people like Bernadette and our brand partners like Sky Vodka on how we can use the power of media to reshape the landscape and the world, frankly, to be more inclusive and more equitable for all types of folks.
Awesome. I can't wait to dive in on some of the things that you can help share with this audience. Bernadette, let's talk about your background. And I see you've not only oversee Sky Vodka, but many other in the portfolio of the White Spirits. And you have a strong background in building powerful brands that connect with consumers. So let's hear a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me here today. And this is a really exciting space for us, obviously, as marketers. But my role is the senior category lead for White Spirits with the Campari Group here in the US. I have vodka, tequila, gin, mezcal, ouzo, a lot of the great spirits that many enjoy, and Sky Vodka is probably our biggest priority within the business. It's a top 7 brand, and we're very passionate about diverse communities. Being that the brand was born in San Francisco in 1992, and some of the first places that the product was sold was in the Castro. And so we're doing a lot of great work. Mindshare is obviously our very trusted partner in building our communication strategy, but also our media buying. So that's the connection for the two of us.
Awesome. And your office parties must be something else, just saying.
Yes, they are.
All right, so let's start a little bit, Rachel. Just for people that aren't familiar, what is an inclusion PMP? How does it work, and how did you develop it, and how are you continuing to invest in it? Let's just for those who aren't familiar.
So our inclusion PMPs were a project that we started in 2019 and launched with Bernadette and Sky Vodka in early 2020. And the purpose of them, simply said, is to use media to fund journalism directly in response to the ways that ad tech, human bias, technology bias has disproportionately defunded journalism for marginalized groups. So we launched our inclusion PMPs first for the LGBTQ community. We have another one that we launched for the Black community, and we're getting ready in the next few months to launch another one for the Hispanic and Latinx communities. The purpose of them, again, is to fund journalism for those communities. And the way that we do that is in partnership with publishers who are either owned and created by folks from that community, or publishers who historically and in recent times cover rights for those communities in a positive way, but are more broader in nature.
So the focus really is about helping those voices be heard.
Exactly. We really believe, the inclusion PMPs at its core are a way for brands to fund and uplift voices in direct response to some of the purpose messages they might be doing. If a brand is a vocal advocate like Sky Vodka is for the queer community and features those faces and those voices in their ads, they should therefore be funding their voices in media as well through things like programmatic marketplaces like the inclusion PMPs. We think that's a really powerful statement for brands to be making. And
Bernadette, how have you leveraged the inclusion PMP for Sky or other brands? Specifically Sky, it sounds like, for the LGBT.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right, though, other brands as well. I mean, that's certainly one of the impacts, the broader company where we're looking now to as how we leverage this across all brands, because it's incredibly successful. And for us with Sky Vodka, it's one component, a very important component, but one component of the broader sort of media universe. The LGBTQ plus community is an important community for Sky Vodka, as I said. And so for us, when this opportunity came to us from Mindshare, it was really a no-brainer. I mean, we were very excited about the prospect, of being able to achieve our business goals, which is really being able to communicate, year round with this community of folks who are important to us. And then this incredible bonus of actually being able to do good with media dollars. And I think as marketers, that's the holy grail that we're all looking to find, especially today. How can I achieve those business goals and at the same time have those dollars, contribute in the right way? So as I know Rachel and I sort of laugh about, but when this was presented, I just said yes on the spot. I said I don't even have to ask anyone, internally or put this up the chain and look for approvals. This is going to be a hard yes, and let's go. And so for us now, in terms of the plan, it's year round. We refresh creative based on the season and the moment and whatever whether it's something we're talking about that's tapping into culture at that moment. And we're not just showing up in June, which I think is also, something I'm sure we'll talk about here today. But for us, it's about that year-round communication with that community that are important for us.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so important, because we see time and again that brands step in and step out. They step in for June, they step in for February, Black History Month, they do their thing, and it's like, okay, check that box. And I feel that ever since, I look at life now pre-George Floyd and post, because I do think that was the moment of awakening for the masses. I mean, there's been lots of other incidences that have happened that have made you stop and go, wow, we need to do more and do better. But I think that was a defining moment for so many companies and industries saying, okay, we can no longer look the other way. So if I look at life that way, over the past year, we have seen a shift where brands, I think, are now saying, we can't just step in and step out. We're being watched, and our employees are also the watchdogs. So it's not even just reaching a consumer anymore. It's our own employees are expecting more from us. So it's many stakeholders. It's your consumer, your customers, your employees, your board are all now looking to say, what are we authentically doing, both within our own house? How are we cleaning up our own house and making sure that we're being diverse and inclusive? And how are we spending our media dollars responsibly? And I'm seeing like this massive shift this past year. It feels like the two of you are ahead of the curve because you were already on 12 months a year, already knowing the power of having an inclusive strategy and talking to a specific community. But have you seen, Rachel, and I'll throw this to you, are a lot more brands coming to you now and saying, help us out, your consultancy group, for example, and where are their biggest struggles?
I do think we are seeing a lot more brands happily kind of starting to go in this area and starting to question, what are we saying versus doing, to your point, Cheryl. And the way that we organize that and frame it is really inspired and directly lifted from the principle of the PMPs, which is intentionality. So I think when you think about the idea of purpose, like purpose as a concept is an end state. And I think unintentionally, brands maybe have lacked the actual actions behind their purpose. And we think by infusing intentionality and intentional media into what they're doing, that's one step that they can take. It's not the whole answer, but it's one step to fixing the doing problem. When you think about how brands show up in media, it's largely been focused on the message, and there's nothing wrong with that. The message and creative representation is incredibly important. But the power of media lies in economics. Like, we control $1/3 of $1 trillion as an industry. And I think if we thought a little bit more intentionally about how we're spending those dollars, where we're spending, whose voices we are either suppressing or supporting, which is what the inclusion PMPs are all about, that's where we see the power. And that's really what we're starting to focus on now as an agency with our intentional media approach, which is taking the principles of the PMPs and broadening them to more strategic thinking, influencer marketing, and outside of the world of programmatic, how and where are we spending our dollars?
And Bernadette, have you seen a company-wide, Sky has a history with this demographic. It's a logical no-brainer. But are you seeing that other brand managers and parts of the company are saying, hey, we all need to be thinking this way? And are they also developing campaigns that include some kind of inclusion strategy or PMP?
Absolutely. I think it's not just our company. I see it, from my peers and, across the industry and also beyond, it's very important. And I think, something that Rachel just nodded to around, the PMP being sort of one step towards taking action. I think, for us, even with Sky, and one of the reasons I took this job with Sky, many years ago, was that there was so much intentionality to what the brand has been doing. And I think a lot of the time also not being attributed for that. And I think also, I think we could do better. You won't see Sky, and you haven't seen Sky come out with, limited edition rainbow bottles every year. And a lot of the things that you see in the market, which, are important and have been, important throughout the history. But I think a lot of what we've focused on with Sky is grassroots, very small, a lot of small but multiple small actions that over time, we hope certainly will make impact. And I think one of the things we did last year, Rachel will probably remember, is during June, when, obviously there was important conversations going on throughout Pride Month around Black lives and Black Lives Mattering. We had to really think hard about, well, hang on, what message do we want to send at that time and through our channels? And actually, we took our branding off. We took all of our branding messaging off, and we donated those PMP LGBTQ plus PMP ad spaces to Black queer voices. And we asked a range of artists. One of those is Fred Sands, a call out to Fred Sands, who created these beautiful pieces of art that talked about Black trans lives and Black queer lives mattering, and clicking through to foundations that were supporting those communities and doing the grassroots work with no brand attribution. Which, as a marketer, I'm sure there's many on watching this saying, oh, why would you do that? And, we had a lot of discussion around it, but at the end, it was a bit bigger than us. And we wanted to to do, again, this small token during an important time, but, felt like this was an important message. And we could resume, normal programming when the time was right. But again, just the actions, these small actions over time, I think are what will make the difference. As opposed to, again, of course, always showing the diverse voices and folks in our creative and having the right messages. But the action is really important.
And I think that's a real demonstration of brand advocacy and the power of, over time, Sky building this reputation with the community and having no question about taking those types of advocacy steps. And I've never in my life said a banner ad is beautiful, but those banner ads were genuinely beautiful ads. And it was an incredible execution, and, taking the PMPs for more brand and business purposes, then translating into something that was true advocacy, I think is a really incredible gesture of what media can and should do for brands and for people.
Yeah, that was an incredible pivot. And I think, again, to decide that it's not about us, it's about doing something, stepping in and stepping up, that's real allyship too. And I think that's the kind of authenticity that you're talking about, Rachel, that you can't fake it. You can't suddenly decide, oh, let's make this our purpose, or let's this be our intention, when it's not an authentic, genuine thing. And I was speaking to someone recently who advises companies on DEI, and she said that you really have to start with what level, where are we comfortable playing? Or do we want to be groundbreakers? Do we want to be like, we're going to go all out and, that's what we're about? Or do we want to look, we're willing to do some things, we want to make a difference, that's where we're comfortable? Or we're just not comfortable stepping in. We're not sure what we're here to do or why it makes sense for us, and therefore let's not. And that you really have to have an honest conversation with yourself as a brand, and not just jump in to do because you think you're supposed to, and then it almost backfires because it comes off as inauthentic. So Rachel, what are some other ways, how are you helping brands get to that decision where, how do you want to play in this space? Like Bernadette, they were all in, it's like, this is us, it's who we are, we're all in, what can we do? How do you help other companies get to a place where it's right for their brand and comfortable for them?
Without going into kind of long and laborious details about our intentional media approach, the first step that we take with brands is understanding what we call their archetype of intentionality, which is kind of parallel to what you were saying a little bit, Cheryl. We have different archetypes based off of how we think brands might behave or show up. We've lifted some of those archetypes and definitions from traditional definitions in academia around activism, and understanding how activists show up, whether they're a little bit more conservative and kind of long-term views versus more grassroots and really bullish and how they might approach certain social issues. And we go through a whole strategic and business planning process to match brands to that archetype, to then translate how they behave in media and how they can show up authentically without being disingenuous, without doing harm to communities, but also understanding if they do want to show up in a smaller way, what that smaller way might look like that still feels genuine to their brand, while also underpinning all of that with the business opportunity. I think Bernadette spoke a little bit in the beginning about this is both a kind of moral decision and a business decision. And we fundamentally understand as an agency, we are here to help clients grow their business. And we just think there's a type of growth that is good growth, and then there's growth that might not be that level of good growth. And we think underpinning this entire intentionality process, we have to put the business at the center, but we don't think those decisions are mutually exclusive to one another.
And Bernadette, how do you track, measure success, or know that something worked well, or you tried something, it didn't work, that's okay, we learned from it, and now the next time? Like, how do you capture metrics and learnings from the programs you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really important part at the beginning that we set up together with Mindshare to make sure that we were getting learnings, with regular frequency, so that we could make those pivots and adjustments. We implemented brand lift studies, with third parties to ensure that we could gather and track, the impact across a range of metrics, things like brand consideration and, of course, awareness and other things. most important to us is really, how favorable someone feels in that community for the brand, and the impact of being exposed to that, that creative over time. So we saw extraordinary impact, certainly in the few studies we've done among the community who've been exposed to the creative. And we've learned things like, we get better impact when the creative talks more directly to the community and what they're, what's topical at the time, or what they're going through. The more direct the creative feels in touch with the community, the better, brand lift impact we have. So that's been a really great learning for us, and we've tested that, and we continue to test those. Sky's going through a very big relaunch at the moment. The brand is being relaunched, the first time since 1992. And so it's really interesting for us because we want to be able to tell that story, but we have to find a really nice creative way to do that obviously, weaves well into, what the community is talking about and needs at this moment. So that's been a really fun challenge for us as marketers to try and, find that sweet spot.
So relaunch, is that a redesign, a package?
Yes. Yeah, no, we actually made a really beautiful tweak to the liquid at the same time as overhauling the pack as well. So the product is now made with water enriched by Pacific minerals, which add this beautiful subtle salinity to the liquid, which makes a really fresh and round vodka soda. And of course, back in the day, vodka was Sky Vodka was crafted and made basically to create the perfect martini, which was, the drink of the day for vodka. But today, people are drinking in more casual settings. They're drinking really light, crisp, clean, better for you kind of drinks. And vodka soda is one of those very, very popular mixed drinks. So we sort of rethought it, and that's what this new twist to the liquid is going to deliver. The pack is beautiful, and it's hitting shelves right now, so we're really excited about it.
Awesome. I'll have to go check it out. So we have a couple minutes left. I'd like to just quickly, what's next, Rachel, for your PMP strategy, and then what's next with you? Obviously, the launch is a big thing, and then let's talk a little bit about what's next, and then we'll end with some advice for brands. So Rachel, first, what's next? Where do you go from here? I know you're going to do Latinx, but how do you see this expanding over time?
Yeah, our vision from the last few months has been to take the principles of the PMP to, again, use the economic power of media to both support communities and also find business opportunities with those communities, and expand that to something that is bigger in nature, which is what the intentional media approach that we're building out is all about, which I've stated a little bit throughout this conversation. So that is something that has been actively rolled out at a global level within Mindshare right now. And we are building different products, solutions, again, all centered on this idea of using media for good across DE&I, sustainability, data ethics, responsible journalism, and being able to, again, use and partner with our clients on the power of media to reshape the world for good. So that's really where I see the next iteration and next evolution of what the PMPs are. And the PMPs are in that intentional media approach, and building it out to think about things like influencers, audiences, our comm strategy, how we're using data, the sustainable impact of plans, which we're really excited about.
Oh, fantastic. Great work that you're doing. And I know you are really at the forefront of creating this kind of marketing. So we will continue this conversation. So I want to keep track of what's next and how you're doing. And also, how can the IAB help? So I definitely want to have some follow-up chats with you.
Absolutely.
And Bernadette, you've got a big launch coming up. Very exciting.
Yes.
What else is new and different coming your way?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously in Pride Month, which is obviously an important month, regardless. We're obviously, showing up for the community year round, but this is our month. This is the month that we want to be celebrating and really lauding the great work and achievements of our community, and we are really excited we've just partnered with Simone on our latest campaign. Obviously the latest winner of RuPaul's Drag Race. And she's doing some incredible stuff, and Kim Petras as well, and Alok. So we have a great crew this year and some really exciting campaigns rolling out. But in terms of the PMP and more inclusive spaces, and we're also working right now with Rachel and the team to explore opportunities for the Latinx PMP for one of our tequila brands, Espolon. So, broader reach and exposure with other brands and more intentional media spending on the way.
Fantastic. You two are an incredible team, by the way. So Rachel, quick wrap up. Anything you want to, as a consultant out there, what are some things that brands should stop doing? What should they start doing? What do you see that are either common mistakes or just some words of wisdom?
I would say stop thinking about purpose in a silo of just creative and start thinking about intentionality as an opportunity in media. And I'd also just say happy Pride.
I love it. Bernadette, any last minute advice for your peers?
Yeah, and I think I nodded to it before, is trying to find that space in between. Like I think once you've got a brand, you're clear on who you are as a brand, or who your brand, what you're supposed to represent, that DNA. Find ways that you can marry your business goals with doing good for that community. And if you can find a way to do it all year round, I think that's the win. And big and small. I think that's the other piece that I've certainly learned myself in the last 3 to 5 years, is it doesn't have to always be big stuff. Like, even if it's just little things over time, they add up.
Yeah, and I would say stop thinking about what you should be doing and just start doing.
Yes, do it.
So many, like, they're talking the talk, but it's like, just start doing something. You're right, little things can make a big difference. Just say, hey, we want to support this effort over here, and not worry so much about what the ROI is going to be, improving things out in the business case, and trust your gut a little bit. Do what's right. You can never go wrong by doing what's right. Right?
Agree.
Thank you guys so much for being with me today. Happy Pride. It's a month near and dear to me personally, so I will be celebrating with your new Sky Vodka. And thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So if you are interested in today's topic and want to get involved either as an ally in action or perhaps a passionate participant, you can help by going to IAB.com and looking up the Inclusion Institute. We have lots of interesting programs. Join us on this journey to make the digital media ecosystem more inclusive, more diverse. IAB There is a production of the Interactive Advertising Bureau. Our show today was produced by Connor Healy, James Linney, Joe Pilla, Loretta Bain, and I'm Cheryl Goldstein. Thank you for joining me.